The Landlord of Nothing, Detroit, 2025. Rain drizzled over the east side like a slow, indifferent sigh. In a sagging brick building on Van Dyke Avenue, its windows fogged with decades of neglect, David Tooth sat hunched over a cracked desk, bathed in the sickly blue glow of a second-hand monitor. His greasy hair was slicked back with something that might have once been pomade, but now smelled more like rancid lard. Perched crookedly on his head, an oversized lion's cap, frayed at the brim, gifted years ago by a tenant who'd hoped flattery might delay rent. David wore it like a crown. He was 47, though he looked older, pale, bloated, eyes like burnt-out headlights. A half-empty six-pack of Bud Light sat on the desk, next to an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts and a single crumpled envelope labeled "For Mittens Flea, Meds Denise." He hadn't opened it. Denise's younger sister, the one who'd escaped Detroit for Ann Arbor and a life that included dental floss and emotional regulation, had stopped calling after the third ignored. Voicemail. David wasn't really a landlord. His parents, both long retired to a gated community in Novi, had spun the lie gently. "You're the caretaker, Davy. The building's yours to manage." It was their mercy, a fiction to keep him from drowning in the truth that he'd never held a real job, never owned anything but debt and regret, and that his high school diploma, earned at 21 after 4 years of suspensions, expulsions, and back alley booze runs, was the peak of his ambition. Back then, he'd been slick. 21 while still in homeroom, flashing his fake ID like a badge. He'd jot down orders during lunch, 2/5 of Tonkaray, a handle of Everclear, some Boone's Farm. If you got it, then hit the liquor store after final bell. Sold it back, tripled in price behind the bleachers. For a while, he felt like a king. Then came the raid. Cops, handcuffs, a mugshot that still haunted his nightmares. His mother hired a lawyer who cost more than most people's houses. The charges got reduced. The paperboy he'd clipped during his 5th DUI settled out of court. Just a bump, his dad had said, clapping him on the shoulder like it was a golf mishap. Now, David lived in apartment 1B, the ground floor unit, with the mildew-streaked walls and the window that wouldn't close all the way. His only companion was Mittens, a mangy tabby whose fur had thinned from relentless scratching. Fleas danced in the dim light like tiny devils. David watched them sometimes, mesmerized, between sips. Every night at 9 p.m., he went live. "Welcome back to the Tooth Truth Hour, you sad sacks." He'd slur into his mic, voice thick with Bud Light and self-loathing. His stream had maybe 37 regulars, mostly trolls, some pity followers, a few who thought he was performance art. He mocked them all, the lonely, the broke, the desperate. He called one viewer Diaper Dan because he once mentioned incontinence meds. He laughed when another admitted to crying after watching Marley Me. David didn't care. Or rather, he cared too much. And this was the only way he knew how to armor it. He hadn't showered in 11 days. He hadn't left the building in 3 weeks. His 7th DUI was pending. The court date loomed like a hangover he couldn't drink through. Sometimes, in the quiet between streams, when the cat's scratching paused and the rain tapped like a ghost at the window, David would stare at the graduation photo on his dresser hem at 21. Cap too big, smile forced, eyes already hollow. He'd think about the kids he sold to. Where were they now? Doctors? Dead? Did any of them remember him as the guy who made their first blackout possible? He'd reach for another Bud Light, not because he wanted it, but because without it, the silence got louder. And in that silence, he heard every version of himself he'd failed to become. Outside, Detroit moved on. Inside, David Tooth remained Lord of Nothing, king of a kingdom of empty cans and unopened envelopes, ruler of a life that had long since stopped believing in him. And still, every night, he logged on. Because even the lowest of the low need an audience.